But through this process, lithium will co-precipitate with other salts because it's not an exact science. And they lose about 70% of the lithium that you originally pump up in the brine form till when you get to the end, they lose 60 to 70%. So they only recover 30 to 40% of the available lithium. It takes 18 months and it's a 15 square mile footprint.
Welcome back to the Clean Techies podcast, where we interview ClimateTech founders and VCs to discuss all things building and investing to solve the biggest challenge of our generation, climate change. This is episode 83 of the show. I'm your host, Silas Maynor, and thank you for joining us on today's episode. Before we get into the details, a note for founders listening: if you are in the fundraising process or about to be, feel free to reach out. We're glad to make any intros that we can, as well as make any introductions to potential partnerships if you're seeking out any strategic partnerships. Also, a quick thanks to NextWave Partners for sponsoring the show. NextWave are experts in talent acquisition, recruitment, and retention across the climate tech, renewables, and ESG spaces globally. So if your team is growing or you are looking to make a career change, reach out to them at next-wavepartners.com or reach out to one of their consultants directly via their LinkedIn page. All right, let's get into today's episode details. So if you are somebody who's ever wondered, how will we have enough lithium over the next decade to support the EV and energy transition with the batteries that we will need, today is an episode just for you. So today we speak with Teague Egan, who is a founder of EnergyX, and without any previous technical experience or even experience in climate, he has founded this company, which is very, very technical in nature. And in essence, what they're doing is they have a process that can massively increase the amount of lithium recovered from brine, which is a sort of mineral water of kind of pumped up from the earth, that conventional ways recover usually about 20% of the total lithium contents over the course of about an 18-month period. He explains how that works in the show the old way, conventionally. And they are able to recover around 90% in a much shorter time. So it's a massive increase of efficiency, from 20 to 90% increase. So overall, really super interesting technologies. And in this conversation in particular, we cover his journey to finding this problem and how he built the company, what their technology does, and how it's an artificial intersecting of several kind of proven technologies, done very intentionally. The detailed process of how he funded the company at the start of the milestones to achieve each subsequent fundraise. I thought that was very interesting, especially for hard tech founders to be focused on. And then finally, how they spent effort up front building a world-class team in order to help them attract talent more broadly down the road. Really, really interesting take on how he did that. So just in general, very, very amazing conversation. One of my favorites so far, especially in the new year. I think just very exciting generally for aspiring climate tech entrepreneurs as well as people already in the space. I think it should be very, very valuable information. So without any further delay, let's get into today's episode details. All right. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you, Silas?
Can't complain. It's another beautiful day in New York City. Maybe not as beautiful as it was in Mexico when I was there last weekend, but still a great place to be. Very cool. Let's get right into things. Why don't you kind of just start us off with a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and kind of how you got into the space of what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Teague Egan, and I'm the CEO and founder of EnergyX, which is a lithium refinery and extraction company. And we're actually also focused on next generation batteries. But I started the company 4 years ago, and I actually decided that I wanted to start this company based on a trip to South America, where I found myself in one of the largest lithium reserves in the world. And I've been driving a Tesla since 2013, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall that lithium was going to become a really big problem and bottleneck for the electric vehicle transition. And I decided that I wanted to start a company to focus on how we can more efficiently and cost effectively produce lithium, and really focus on the lithium supply chain and really battery materials supply chain. So that's the genesis of EnergyX. And we built a tremendous team. We're located in Austin, Texas. We have about 55 people now at the company. And it's something that not a lot of people are focused on, surprisingly. The actual like technology and innovation behind the lithium material. So we've carved out a pretty nice niche for ourselves, and yeah, just building cool technologies here.
Mhm. I'm kind of curious. For those listening who may not be familiar, I did a bit of research on your background, but what ended up leading you to start a company like this? Right, this is extremely difficult science stuff. What is your background? Did it lend towards this? Was it something that you started just because you knew it needed to be done and you surrounded yourself with the right people? Can you talk about this experience and kind of maybe the difficulties of getting into this space, given kind of what your original background was in?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think any entrepreneur starts a company thinking about the difficulties. Well, at least any good entrepreneur. When you think about the difficulties and you think about the reasons why something can't happen, usually those are the people that don't start companies in the first place. Uh, the true entrepreneurs enjoy solving the hard problems because the hard problems are what changes the world the most, right? So, you know, going into it, I didn't necessarily think about all the challenges. You obviously know that there will be challenges in anything that you do, in any company, in any endeavor, um, any goal that you set for yourself, there are going to be challenges, but that almost makes it more rewarding if you're able to stick with it and accomplish it through the end. I mean, nothing in life is rewarding if it was easy, right? Other than maybe winning the lottery or something like that. But for this specifically, I found myself standing in this salt flat down in Bolivia with our tour guide telling me that this is the world's largest lithium reserve, yet Bolivia wasn't producing any lithium. And I said, this is a problem worth trying to solve. This is, I think that the energy transition is going to be one of the biggest, industries of the next 50 years. And, that there was an opportunity sitting right in front of me, um, just waiting to be grabbed. And, any great journey starts out with the first step. And, you know, you got to take that first step, and then the second step, and then the 10th, 100,000th step. And, this is something that is rewarding day by day, trying to solve this problem. So that's kind of, how I think about
Mhm.
life and about the origins of the company.
So when you recognize that this kind of more, I guess, say broader topic, this was going to be an issue of the lithium kind of supply chain. What were your next steps on doing that? Were you in the process of still running another company? What would you do, and then what steps did you take to kind of decide where in this value chain am I going to be involved, and where can I actually create value? Did you find technology that was kind of developed already and needed to be commercialized? Like, what was that process like? Because I know there's a lot of people in kind of, I guess, entrepreneurs in general who want to be part of this transition, this energy transition and everything, but they have no idea where to start. They have no technical background. So could you walk us through that process and maybe some of the kind of the thought process as well, not just the actual steps, but how you thought about it and how you approached it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, just to put it out there, I also have no technical background. So, I'm in the same shoes as maybe a lot of other people out there thinking about, how do I get involved? And I'm more than happy to share my story and kind of like the actual details of kind of the next handful of steps that I took. Um, After my trip to Bolivia, which was, just as a tourist, like I was just traveling and like basically sightseeing. I realized that this was, an immense opportunity, but I had no idea what type of lithium company I was going to start. And there's a million different types of companies. Like I could have started trading lithium or, seeking financing for lithium for other people, or uh, trying to buy like a resource or a reserve and become an exploration company as opposed to like a technology company. Um, all I knew is that I wanted to be involved with lithium because I saw the future in it, right? And my specific experience lent itself to helping Bolivia figure out its challenges, and the main like if Bolivia has the world's largest lithium resource, why are they not producing lithium,
Hmm.
especially if it's such an important material? So, I thought it's not like the company started on day one of that trip. Like I came back to the United States and thought about it for a few weeks and started reading about lithium. Like I literally knew nothing about lithium at all. I started researching articles. I started like just any sort of information I could consume about lithium. I started to read and learn. Read books, read articles. Who are the major players in lithium? Who's producing lithium? Who buys lithium? How much does lithium cost? What are the different forms of lithium? What type of lithium goes into batteries? Like I knew nothing, and I had to learn all of this stuff. But when I came back to the States, um, I hit up my one friend that I knew that was in mining. He actually started a copper extraction company, and he was my first call. And I said, hey, I have this awesome idea around lithium. Like, I think it's going to be super important. Like, do you want to partner with me on this? And he said, well, copper is actually very different than lithium, especially the lithium in salt flats. Um, Copper extraction, the way that we do it is from like hard rock, or the lithium extraction that you are talking about. Lithium is a salt that's dissolved in water. So it's actually more similar to uh, water separation and water technologies than it is to the copper extraction that I'm doing. But I know a guy and I'll put you in touch. So this guy put me in touch with the second guy. So now I'm talking to the second guy, and he runs or ran a company called Water Effects, spelled water and then the letter F and the letter X. And he had built like a small pilot plant in Central California using solar thermal forward osmosis. So he had like these solar arrays, and the solar arrays would heat a column, and the column would generate steam, and that would power a system that used forward osmosis to draw water through a membrane and create fresh water. And all of that may sound complicated, and it did to me when I first learned about it, because all that was absolute gibberish. I literally I'm trying to focus, like learn about lithium, and all of a sudden, like I'm reading about solar thermal forward osmosis. Like I had no idea what any of that meant. But I go up to meet this guy in Central California, and he's showing me his little pilot plant and like all this stuff. And I tell him about the lithium idea. And I said, you just have to come see this. So I convinced this guy to fly back down to Bolivia with me and check out the salt flat, the world's largest lithium reserve. So he ends up doing that, and a strike of luck, it turns out that the Chinese engineering company that had helped him build his little pilot plant in California was also the engineering company that was helping the Bolivians build one of their plants to try to extract lithium. The Chinese are everywhere. So we end up getting a tour of this facility, and it was the first time that I saw these huge evaporation ponds that are currently used to extract the lithium from the salt brine, the water brine. And I'm asking the engineer all these questions, like why is it done this way? And he was basically just like, because this is the way that it's always been done. And any entrepreneur will tell you that that is the worst answer in the book. Um, Especially ones that think and follow Elon. To say that this is just the way that it's always been done is like not an acceptable answer at all. So, as I progressed conversations with this gentleman from Water FX, he was trying to get me to invest in his company, and I was, trying to work out a deal where we could utilize some of his technologies for the lithium, and we couldn't end up coming to some sort of deal. But he ended up sending me this paper, an academic paper. And it was, I literally just started reading academic papers a few months prior when I started learning about lithium. Um, but I, read this paper about these extremely lithium selective materials that were being developed at the University of Texas. And so on academic papers, there's, the authors, and you can just look up these authors, and they're usually all professors or students, and you can literally get in touch with any of them. So I email the authors of this paper, who are obviously the inventors of this technology, and they had just patented some of this technology. So I flew over to Austin, Texas, and had a meeting, and that was, the next person that I talked to. And I'm writing in my spreadsheet, I'm just listing all the contacts that I'm making over, this 4 or 5, 6 month period. And then now I'm talking to these professors, and it's just one thing led to another. But I ended up, the professor from University of Texas said, "Oh, I have partners in Australia that we co-patented this with." So then I had to fly out to Australia and meet with these guys. And it's just, I ended up licensing this intellectual property from University of Texas, but it took me 9 months to do this license. But after I had my first license, then I had something real. I had a license to this technology, and all the while, I'm cold emailing lithium producers, asking if they had interest in testing this technology, and trying to make sure that there was a product market fit here, that I would actually have customers to sell this technology to once I acquired it. So those are kind of the first few steps of the very beginnings of EnergyX. And
I
it's
think,
just been, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think this is really fascinating because it's something, I've not heard a whole lot of stories. It tends to be the people I've had on the show a lot of times are the scientists themselves, and they're the people who've come up with this thing, and then they want to commercialize it. It's really interesting to see it from the reverse, where you had the idea, you understood that there was a problem that needed to be solved, and you just kind of like went down the rabbit hole of figuring it out. And one thing leads to the next, and before you know it, you've got something real. And I really think it's interesting how you went after getting something real, right? Because I'm assuming that once you had that real thing, and we can get into this in a second, that probably was a really big catalyst to help get you, additional funding and more interest from other people to, like you said, test the product market fit. Would these people be interested in buying this thing hypothetically if it actually works, right? I really
Yep.
like that. You didn't have to, you didn't necessarily go and do a pilot and prove it first. You just made sure, hey, if this works hypothetically, would you want to test it out, right? So I think that's really
Yeah.
really cool. I think a lot of people should take note of that. um I know we're getting really far into the details here. We should really talk about, can you walk us through the technology itself, just like if you're explaining it to your grandmother type of thing, like really really simple terms, and if you want to, we can break down a couple more of the technical items.
Yeah, definitely. So the technology has evolved a lot over the past 4 years. And I say that because this paradigm shift that we're pushing forward in lithium extraction refinery is a step change, where today lithium is extracted and refined using these huge evaporation ponds, that the pond systems are literally bigger than New York City, 15 square miles. And the current process is you pump up brine brine is just another fancy word for salty water that the lithium is dissolved in, along with a lot of other minerals. And then you put it into these ponds, and it goes through several ponds over the course of 18 months. And the different salts get precipitated out. So like the sun evaporates the water in the ponds. These are in areas in South America that have the highest UV radiation in the world. They're at 14,000 feet of altitude. There's zero rain, and the sun just evaporates the water. And then the salt that's dissolved in the water will precipitate out, and then at the bottom it's just huge piles of salt, and the salt will precipitate out one by one, not one salt by one salt, but one type of salt in each pond. So you have, say, for this example's sake, you have a series of 6 ponds. In the first pond, sodium chloride will precipitate, and that's table salt. Then in the second pond, potassium chloride will precipitate, and this all looks the exact same. It all looks just like white salt. But potassium chloride is used as fertilizer for agricultural purposes. And then the next one, magnesium chloride, and finally lithium will come out at the very end. But through this process, lithium will co-precipitate with other salts because it's not an exact science, and they lose about 70% of the lithium that you originally pump up in the brine form. Till when you get to the end, they lose 70%, 60 to 70%. So they only recover 30 to 40% of the available lithium. It takes 18 months, and it's a 15 square mile footprint. And you can't just build these anywhere. Like there's a lot of resources that are in areas where you can't build 15 square mile ponds. So that's the existing method. So you can start to see the opportunity that I saw to change that and become more efficient and ultimately more cost effective and more environmentally friendly. So the concept of direct lithium extraction eliminates the ponds and takes this pumped brine, like you basically have a well, you pump up the brine and then you feed it through some sort of separation mechanism that will extract the lithium and get rid of everything else, and then you can just re-inject that back into the ground kind of downstream so you don't redilute the brine that you're pumping up, right? So at a very simple idea, that is what we're focused on, and not only extracting it, but then refining it so it's ready for batteries. Like, you can pump up crude oil from the ground, and then there's like a lot of refinery steps to get it ready for gasoline. So that is ultimately the area that we are focused in. And the way that we do that is now through 3 technologies. And initially we started with one, and that was membranes. And all 3 of these technologies are prevalent in other industries, but just not applied to lithium. So that's a big key here, in that I didn't like invent some crazy new technology. I borrowed technologies that worked in water separation, like membranes, right? Membranes are used under your sink. They're used in oil and gas separations. They're used in agriculture. Membranes are used everywhere. But there's just not a lithium selective membrane that has been formulated or designed to separate lithium out of brine. Because lithium before electric vehicles really was a small fringe application. Like, it's used, of course, in batteries for computers and phones. But when you think about the materials in batteries, You have lithium, you have copper, you have nickel. Um, some batteries have cobalt. But like, take copper, for example. The total global annual supply of copper is, I think it's like 100 million. It's like annual supply of copper. For the past decade, the total global copper reserves have increased from 630 million metric tons to 880 million metric tons. Total annual copper production. 21 million metric tons of copper is produced per year, right? Because you have all these other applications. So the manufacturing methods for copper are robust and efficient. Lithium, the total global production of lithium was less than 100,000 tons just in the mid 2010s, because there's no other application for lithium other than like some medication like bipolar disorder, or it's used in some glass. And then it's used in like small consumer devices, batteries. So now all of a sudden you have electric vehicles, which is a major application, and it takes 10,000 iPhones to make one electric vehicle battery. So you have this massive application, but the manufacturing methods are archaic. They use like ponds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the main opportunity I saw. That was the shift. And that is, why I looked at other industries that I wanted to like somewhat replicate. So like membranes, right? You use membranes and water separations. Let's use it for lithium separation and brine. Or solvent extraction is a technology that is used for over a dozen metals in the mining industry, and it's used for 25% of the entire world's copper supply. So solvent extraction is used for 5 million tons of copper production. You can design solvent extraction molecules for lithium, and it's basically taking all of the other off-the-shelf processes like the tanks, the mixing, the whole process is the same, but you're just designing the molecule that is attracted to lithium as opposed to copper, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we did that for solvent extraction. We designed lithium selective membranes and adsorption. So like little resins or beads that will absorb lithium, which is used in a lot of water purification systems. And the reason that we did all three is because we realized that not one technology was the best for all scenarios, and that there were shortcomings with each technology. But in basically every situation, either one or a combination of technologies could address the different challenges that a brine provided. And I'll give you some examples. As I mentioned, we set out to solve Bolivia's problem, and Bolivia had a very specific, like right next door in Chile, they're using ponds to produce 100, 200,000 tons of lithium per year today now. So the Bolivians thought, why can't we just build these ponds and copy the Chileans and start producing lithium? Well, in Bolivia, they have a much higher magnesium to lithium ratio than they do in Chile. And it turns out that magnesium is the impurity, the dissolved salt that lithium most likes to co-precipitate with. So where Chile experiences 30 to 40% recovery, which, we're sitting here talking about how bad that is, Bolivia was experiencing like 2 or 3% recovery.
Wow.
So they basically couldn't produce anything at all because of the composition of their brine. So we had to design our membranes that could do that specific separation of lithium versus magnesium. And this is something that like I learned by testing, like and talking, and like by having them ship brine and like all this stuff. over years, and it guided like the direction of the company. But that's what we designed our first membranes to do, that specific separation. However, when we started testing Chile's brine and Argentina's brine, they had different challenges. They had very high sodium ratios to lithium. And our membranes didn't work as designed for that. And we tried to design lithium sodium selective membranes, but that's a very different challenge, because diving deeper into the chemistry, those are both monovalent ions. Magnesium is a divalent, so it has basically 2 electrons versus 1. So it's a different type of separation on a chemistry level. So that's when we needed to develop solvent extraction, which can actually do that separation. And then adsorption was a third, which is relevant for other types of challenges that brine provided. So that's kind of how we have gotten ourselves to this position, having multiple technologies in our portfolio, and can mix and match them or use them in combination to develop an end-to-end solution for any customer that comes to us and says, hey, I have a lithium that has this amount, or a brine that has this amount of concentration of lithium, these impurities. Temperature is another problem. So that's kind of how we've gone to this point in our technology.
Is it something, just out of curiosity, where you kind of just based on the ratio, you can adjust the technology relatively simply to create the correct kind of machinery to do this? Or is it something that has to be almost engineered from the ground up when you say, okay, we've got this, maybe once you have the big buckets of what are the different types of
Yeah.
items that are co-precipitating with them, then you can kind of build that. But can you just like tweak it, tweak the lever, if you will, and combine these together, or is it has to be done from the ground up?
No, now that we have the buckets, we can just tweak small things and apply it based on like different ranges of challenges that brines provide. But yeah,
Interesting.
now that we have it, it's a lot easier to mix and match the different technologies for a full process flow diagram.
Interesting. That is extremely fascinating. I sometimes wish I was a scientist. This is really, really cool stuff, man. One thing I want to understand is then, with your kind of, now that you've developed the company, it's probably had several iterations, who ultimately are your customers? Are you selling, you just license technology? Are you building the actual hardware and then shipping it to these sites? Like, can you walk us through this process? Who would purchase from you?
Yeah. So we have 2 different types of customers. One is lithium producers, and we basically developed this technology that can make their process more efficient and ultimately yield more lithium from the same amount of brine that's pumped up from the ground. We have over 90% recovery rate. I've been mentioning that 30 to 40%. So like, if you're at a 30% recovery rate and we can recover 90%, we can triple your output. If you're producing 100,000 tons, use our technology, you can produce 300,000 tons, right? And we come at, so there's 2 types of customers within that world. There is the existing producers that have already built ponds, and we have designed processes and patented these processes where we can plug into existing pond infrastructure and still boost that yield. Because these companies have spent over billions of dollars building the ponds. They don't want to just have that be like some capex, right?
Mm.
So we can go in and plug our technology into a specific point or points in the pond and avoid all of that co-precipitation loss and increase the yield from whatever they're at typically to above 90%. This also decreases the time. I mentioned that 18 months to go through the pond. You're skipping a few ponds, so it could decrease the time frame by about 25% in that scenario. But ultimately, you're increasing the yield, which drastically decreases the unit economics of that it costs per ton of lithium to produce. and the amortized CapEx. The second is like junior miner exploration companies that don't yet have ponds and want to build just a greenfield facility. So they don't want to build ponds. They just want to use our technology with the brine they pumped out of the ground. So we are moving forward in several types of those situations. But in those situations, typically, it's more of a partnership than us just licensing our technology to someone because they're just now going down the path of building or developing a project. So in those scenarios, we have some control over where or who the lithium is sold to. And the second type of customer is the actual purchaser of that lithium, whether that be cell manufacturers or electric vehicle makers. So those are the other types of customers that I consider for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So when did at what point could you maybe want to rewind a little bit once you started developing some of the technologies and had some MVPs, or maybe even before that? What was the fundraising process like? Did you find some people who are kind of believed in the potential of the technology and were willing to put some seed capital out so you could kind of assemble a bit of a team? How did that look? And then could you walk us through the different kind of stages, if you will, or the different chapters of the company? And really, I think a key thing that's interesting to understand would be what were the triggers that allowed you to then move on to that next stage to get the funding or to continue keeping the investors' interest? Because I know that hard tech is extremely difficult, and there's those triggers tend to be harder than just customer acquisition in software.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I was blessed to be in a situation where I could put up the initial seed capital for the company. And I funded the company to be able to maintain a good portion of the equity. So like I did the first license by myself, grew the team. Obviously I'm able to travel to places like South America and Australia, and didn't have another job while I was doing this. So I had that luxury afforded to me. So for the first, like, I guess all of 2018 and then half of 2019, no, most of actually all of 2019, I was just funding the company, and that was initially like a few $100,000. So you could think about that as like being replaced by friends and family, assuming that you could convince friends and family that this was a good idea. I ultimately executed the license May 2019. So from the time that I first went to Bolivia, which was January 2018 to May of 2019, it was about a year and a half. But up to that point, I'd probably spent 70 or 80,000 bucks, call it $100,000. That was including negotiating the license, which I had to pay $10,000 up front, and I hired lawyers that cost me $30,000. So the license all in was 40 grand, and 60,000 more for like basically just me traveling around, and it might have been a little bit less. So, but call it 70 or 80, call it 100,000, right? Then I in 2019, the end of 2018, I hired a CFO. Started paying him like 4,000 bucks a month or something like that, maybe 3,000 bucks a month part-time. And I started paying some of the people at University of Texas who were the PhD students in this professor's lab who had actually like invented some of the core membrane technology. I started paying them like 2,000 bucks a month as consultants. So that was it. It was me, my CFO, and like these two students that were working on this. And I gave them some very small equity in the company, like 1 or 2%, and that lasted for about a year. But after the license is when I started to like go out and try to raise money. And I raised a little bit in convertible notes. I think I raised like 1 million or 1.5 million in convertible notes. And that was a negotiation because, I thought the valuation should be higher, and then,
Hmm.
they didn't think it was high. So we ultimately ended up on capped convertible notes. And I brought another $1.5 million into the company. And then I funded more into the convertible note as well. And then I ended up doing an equity crowdfunding raise. Um, and that netted me 1.5 million. And then we did our Series A and brought in about 15 million, including the convertible notes and the first crowd fund. So that was like the real. We at that point we had signed a few LOIs with customers. We had our own, not our own. We contracted some research space in a membrane manufacturing company's headquarters, and I had 6 or 7 people working on the company at that point. We had this license. We had developed these membranes. We had got customers to start shipping us brine, and we had good test results. And we had raised this money from crowdfunding, which kind of validated from like 3,000 investors or something like that. And we got a group to fund our Series A for like 15 million. So that was really the first kind of big one, because we had validation of technology, we had customers shipping us brine, we had a solid team. Um, yeah, and that was kind of that.
Would you say that at that point, based on the research you've been doing, that the technology was essentially to some extent proven and beyond just a concept, that's why it also kind of caught the interest of an actual institution to invest?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had taken this technology out of academia, where it's like studied on a very small scale, and like gotten our own lab space and had a team now, and we had good partners. We're working in a big membrane facility that they were making membranes for like large commercial applications, and they were helping us, and we had developed some of these systems. And we had validated it on customers' brine that they had shipped us. And we had made a lot of progress in a very short amount of time with relatively a small amount of capital. So I think
Hmm.
that's what gave our Series A investors confidence in us. Um, and the Series A capital was like, go build a pilot plant and demonstrate this in the field. Um, and so that's what we did. And with the Series A capital, we were able to build our team, build our capabilities, go build some pilot plants, and we deployed our first pilot plant to the field. Our Series A happened in Q1 of 2021, and then the rest of 2021 we built pilot plants, and then we shipped our first pilot plant to the field at the very beginning of 2022 and demonstrated that in the field for 5 months. And that was the big milestone that led to our Series B. So it was kind of like, as I think about it in sequential order, we got the license, right? And that's kind of what got friends and family and some angel investors interested. um I funded the first little bit to get the license and travel, and then we got the license and started, building a small team and got some angel investors, and then got customers in and shipped brine and built the technology and built a little bit bigger team. And then that got us the Series A. And then with the Series A, we went and built pilots and shipped pilots to the field and validated in the field. And that's what got us the Series B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see because it is a pretty astounding like amount to be pretty. It's pretty low capital expenditure in order to get some type of technology like this to a point. Whereas commercial ready, I think is really interesting the method you approached it there. Would you say that the fact that there was a lot of IP involved was really helpful towards achieving that because there was some type of like license there that they had some type of value even before that pilot project had been built?
Absolutely. I mean, IP has been a huge part of investor due diligence, making sure that the innovations that we're building are protected from an intellectual property standpoint, and that, our strategy is to build a moat around this. So like protect it on multiple levels of intellectual property. So you start at the very top, which is composition of matter, and then how you use that composition of matter and integrate it into systems we've patented, and then how you apply that system into the field as utility is the third level. And we've looked to protect our innovations on all three of those levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really, I think it's quite interesting. I think I just generally speaking, I love when these new technologies come around. One thing I did want to just make sure we really quickly cover is you talked about how you can massively increase the actual effectiveness of what these your clients are doing. What tends to be like a rough increase in ROI, or the return time on their investment for in building these projects or involving your technology in the process?
Yeah. So the ROI on building a large scale commercial plant using our technology is less than 1 year. I mean, it's
Wow.
just remarkable. And these plants are usually like 10-year ROIs, if not more. But this is just such a step change in the way that lithium is produced. And granted, the price of lithium has gone from around $13,000 or $15,000 a ton to $80,000 a ton. So that hasn't hurt the ROI calculation either. Um, but yeah, it's just a super important material for the EV transition, and our technology is so much more effective than the prior methods of production. So it's just a huge
And,
economic win.
And just out of curiosity, obviously this is technology that's being applied to the mining process. Are there ways that you're working on or can already apply this to maybe the recycling in the future of the batteries to then get them ready for remanufacturing at all? Is that something that's been kind of proven out already?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's something that we've discussed a lot about and is completely viable because there's a lot of the same underlying technologies. Like you basically break a battery down and separate out the materials. I mean, at the heart of it, like we are a separations and refinery company in terms of our lithium extraction business. And whether that's coming from like a brine slurry or a slurry that's created from um, breaking down a secondary battery, those same principles still apply.
Mhm.
Now we haven't done that because I've told my team to be laser focused on getting our first commercial lithium extraction refinery plants up and running for customers, but it's something well within our capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also the right timing because there will be a need for recycling of lithium, but at the same time, like the lifespan of most of these batteries is such that there's not going to be a true influx of it for some time. And I think from speaking to other people in the market, I've seen some people really pull the trigger on this recycling stuff a little bit too soon and dove in without hedges against the bet. And now they're just sitting around waiting for material to come through the door to recycle, essentially, right? So I think
Yeah.
that that's quite interesting structurally how you've set that up. I want to talk a little bit before we run out of time here on how you look at talent. So I know that you're obviously working with very deep technical things. What are, if there's a dichotomy, what are the things that you tend to look for in talent? Is it something that's super difficult to find? Just want to talk about that side of things. I'm really kind of curious on how you do this and how you keep your team motivated. I'm assuming there's quite a bit of motivation, especially right now as things are really, really hot off the press, if you will. But just kind of curious to hear about how your leadership style is there.
Yeah. So, I think that first and foremost, I've been extremely lucky and blessed to land the talent that we have. Um, in the beginning, I used like some search firms to try to find people, and we got really lucky with a great CTO who started as the vice president of technology, and then got promoted to executive vice president of technology, and now CTO. So he's really proven himself to me in terms of his uh, technical expertise, but also his management style, and leadership and customer interactions. So, that was a huge win to get somebody that had that much experience and leadership ability. He spent over a dozen years at Rio Tinto, which is the world's second largest mining company, and led all of their uh, lithium projects. Now their lithium projects were more on the hard rock side than brine, but he understands all the processes and the chemistry behind lithium. He's a lithium expert, right? And then what I tried to do was, now that we had a lithium expert, match his knowledge and experience with subject matter experts in the different respective technologies that we were pursuing. So we went out and found essentially the world's domain expert on cation exchange membranes. And this gentleman had never worked on lithium before, but he's literally has 190 patents to his name designing novel membranes. So when you match somebody like that with somebody who has this much experience in lithium, that's a recipe for success. And we also took that approach with the other technology silos that we're pursuing. So solvent extraction, and went into the number one solvent extraction company in the world, BASF, which is the world's largest chemical company that has 50% market share of solvent extraction, and brought on their head of hydrometallurgy, who's designed molecules and solvent extraction chemistries for 6 other metals that have been deployed into the field in huge operations and plants. But he had never worked on lithium before, right? So it's presenting him, somebody who's essentially done everything in the world of solvent extraction, with a new problem, a new challenge, and then pairing him with our lithium expert, right? So that's how we've gone about building our team of world-class talent. And then when you have a team like that, it starts to add up, right? And I went down to South America, and I said, a lot of our operations are going to be in South America. And there was a gentleman who had spent 28 years at SQM and left in 2019. Half of those, he was the senior vice president of lithium operations, ran their whole lithium business. And he flew up to Texas and spent 3 days with us at our facilities, and he was sold. This is amazing. I can't believe, like, he had looked at 20 direct lithium extraction technologies in the past, passed on all of them when he was working at SQM, and came up to our facility, saw it, and now he's our president of South America. So, things like this, it's like going back to the genesis of EnergyX. Like, everything is a building block and it builds on each other. And now we have a world-class team, and we get 100 applications a week for different positions. So and we can essentially go out and recruit the creme de la creme when we're looking to add a position, just based on what we've accomplished thus far. So everything really adds on to itself, and that's kind of how that's all happened.
I mean, I think that that's really fascinating to hear what you've done there. I think, especially doing it intentionally is really, really brilliant. I mean, obviously, my day job being in recruitment, most companies want to skimp on the initial people. They just want to get somebody who can handle it. But putting up the, I guess the effort, if you will, at the front end can save you the recruitment dollars in the end, in the back end, right? When everybody wants to come work with that best person in that and the best person in that, and then ideally you build the culture perfectly so that even once you gain great success and other companies try to copy you, you have a pretty good moat around your team as well. So I think that's really, really
Yeah.
fascinating. I'm conscious of time here. We've had I think a pretty awesome discussion. There's probably more we could go on, but I just want to leave it here. And any final things you want to mention, things you're excited for the future of the space in general. Your ask of the audience in any way, like what do you want to close us off with?
No, I mean, look, this was a really great conversation, and I enjoyed it just as much as you did. I think that it's always fun to be able to get to tell like the genesis and how I've thought about things. Like I feel like this conversation was more geared towards like the entrepreneurial aspect of what we've created here, which is always fun to hopefully inspire other entrepreneurs that are out there. Um, I think that one cool aspect of EnergyX as like a high growth startup is that we have implored crowdfunding so that any retail investor that wants to invest as little as $500 can come be a part of EnergyX, whereas usually that opportunity is not afforded to invest into unicorns like Uber or Airbnb or whatever it is, like SpaceX. But we've really opened that up so that people can be a part of this journey, and hopefully we can all change the world together.
I think that last point is actually really, like, I don't want to gloss over that. It's really interesting because you talked about your ability to help build this company, right? Came from to some extent a little bit of kind of luxury and privilege that you had to be able to do this. And there's a lot of people who may want to do these things that can't, but opening that opportunity to be part of these companies that are doing great things and not have to be those people who are, have their money invested in the private equity funds and those family offices. I think it's really interesting. And again, perhaps a whole other episode about how I really do believe that the climate tech revolution is also going to be play a huge role in advancing ESG and kind of the social aspect of that, especially. So I think that it's
Yeah.
really cool to see what you're doing. But really appreciate you coming on, and definitely excited to share this and see what you guys continue to do. All right, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's very helpful to grow our reach. And of course, share this with somebody who might find it interesting. I think there's plenty of us who know folks in this particular space, in the lithium mining space, or people at least interested in it who might find it fascinating. So definitely send this across to them so you can share it. It helps get the maximum value out of what we've spent time creating. So we really appreciate you doing your part to help us spread the word. And also definitely connect with Teague if you're interested in learning to work with them or anything like that. He's very, very great guy to connect with. Links to connect with him can be found in the description. And then if this is your first time, please of course subscribe and tap the bell for notifications for future episodes. A quick note for our next episode, we'll be joined by Beth and Steve McDaniel, who have developed a very interesting carbon capture technology. So this isn't something as high tech as you would usually think when you think of carbon capture. No, it's actually very simple. It's paint. Yes, you heard that right. It's paint. They have found a way to make paint act as a microalgae, which captures carbon. And the crazy thing is they seek to deploy this on a gigaton scale. So, which is certainly an ambitious goal, but in their eyes, it is very achievable. So, stay tuned for that very interesting episode coming up in the next episode. So, thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will see you next time on Clean Techies, the podcast.